I'm Leonard Nimoy. Join me for In Search of
An Argument.
Hi, this is Shelley Cummings from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm joined this morning by John Heinz in Chicago, Illinois.
Hi, Shelley.
Hello. Jim Gentili in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Hi, Shelley.
And Peggy No Last Name in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Hi, Shelley.
And we are going to talk today about bankruptcy and the different forms of it. And we are going to start our session today with...
Why on earth would we talk about bankruptcy?
Because it's a topic that Jim Gentili really is interested in and knows a lot about.
Are you interested in it, Shelley?
I have some thoughts. Thoughts.
Peggy, are you interested in bankruptcy?
I am interested. Because I don't know anything about it, so I'd like to learn.
I have some brushes.
Talking.
Oh, boy. Peggy, I'm interested in all things Bennett.
We've had some brushes with it, so it's good to talk about it because I think it's a concerning thing in these times right now. So
who's we?
We collectively, Peggy and I, we didn't go through bankruptcy, but we've done some things that was pretty darn close.
Yeah, the 2009 real estate collapse. Everybody almost went through bankruptcy.
Yeah, it was
well, that's
terrifying.
not really that true, but anyway,
a lot of people were looking at it.
What are we talking about before we talk about bankruptcy, Shelley?
What we were talking before bankruptcy, before we talk about bankruptcy today, we're going to discuss top of mind. What is on everybody's top of mind? And we're going to have Peggy go first.
So what's on the top of my mind is the frustration with the tech that I have with the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Seems
Thanks.
logical.
Seems it's what I like about Peggy's top of minds is they are always truly top of mind.
Right. Exactly.
Yes,
they
I
are
interpreted
literally
it
the
literally.
forefront of her mind.
Jim, what's your top of mind?
Well, I have what is at the top of my mind is the incredible prestige of this particular podcast in two examples. Number one, we had a guest way back when we were under a different title, almost 3 years ago, Nevada State Senator Ivana Cancela. And earlier this week, Ivana Cancela was one of the 17
Vegas
keynoters at the Democratic Convention. And she's also mentioned today in an article in the New York Times discussing women's approach to politics.
She was on the convention twice, Jim, not just in the up-and-coming hotshot segment of the convention. She was also on again in another segment that I have forgotten.
Anyway,
she's a hotshot.
She's a hotshot.
Vegas, baby.
And wait a minute, I'm not even finished. Ivana's one hotshot, but the other hotshot is one of our own co-hosts, Shelley Cummings, who recently published an article that she co-authored in Human Molecular Genetics, which is probably beyond my capacity to understand the article. But the article, what's the article called, Shelley?
It is called The Emerging Field of Polygenic Risk Scores and Perspective for Use in Clinical Care.
Am I wrong? I read the abstract. Am I wrong that this is somewhat similar to what we talked about when you came on the podcast the very first time, when we had you on as a guest way back when?
Possibly, but that was way back when, and I'm not sure I exactly remember what I talked about then because it's been a while.
I'm going to take this as a moment to plug my other podcast, Second Rail, where Shelley was a guest and did do a deep dive into her professional hotshotness.
You have another podcast?
Yeah.
He's cheating on us.
Is that cheating? More is more, guys. More is more.
When is your other podcast come out?
It's been out for years. It's not as religious as this one. It's not as good as this one. It's much more professional and uptight. but it's very, very, very.
I've never.
But it's
I didn't
very,
even
very
know you had
efficient.
another podcast.
Yeah, I've been doing it
Do
for a
you
while.
have like other friends you haven't told us about? And,
No, I just do single guests. But I did talk to Shelley about her fabulous career in genetic counseling and subsequent adventures. And I actually also talked to one of her, a friend of hers, about genetic counseling, and who's a professor at Bay Path University I think it's near Boston, right? And I learned a lot about this. So they were two of the best
Do
interviews
you
I've
have
ever
tech
done.
difficulties?
Never.
That's a great question. Never. Well, I thank you, Jim, for recognizing my recent publication. I appreciate that.
Well,
That was
I speak
thoughtful of you.
as an intellectual dilettante in respect to someone who's actually has an intellectual achievement.
Yeah. Okay.
I can send you the whole paper if you want the whole paper.
I was actually
I'm
going to
in.
read it online, but send me the
okay.
paper. It'd be easier
to
if
pay
you send
for
it
it.
to me.
John, what's top of mind for you?
So I'll tell you what's top of mind for me is I was just this morning thinking about how Golden Slumbers, the song on Abbey Road, is very, very short to use as an actual lullaby, because I sing it to my child when I'm putting him to sleep, and sometimes in the middle of the night when he's awake and he's crying. And I've discovered there's just not a lot to it. You can keep repeating it, but it gets boring. And then if you go into the next song, whatever that is, what is that? Boy, you got to carry that weight or something. It's a different vibe.
Mhm.
And by the way, I assume carry that weight is about war or something,
No,
or it
no,
feels
no,
like it's
no,
about
no,
war.
no,
Is carrying
no.
that weight having a baby? Because it sounds like a burden, and I don't want to sing
It
to
is
my
a burden,
baby
but
about how he's a burden.
It's not about either of those things. It's basically more about the Beatles breaking up. All those songs are in some way about the Beatles breaking up. But what you should do is skip from
Golden Slumbers.
to the end where the lyric is, and in the end, the love you take is equal to
Oh,
the
yeah.
love you make.
Yes.
And then if he's still not asleep, you can go to
Right.
the hidden track where he sings,
Oh.
Her Majesty is a pretty nice girl, but she doesn't have a lot to say. Her Majesty is a pretty nice girl, but she changes from day to day. I want to tell her that I love her a lot, but I got to get a belly full of wine. Her Majesty's a pretty nice girl, and someday I'm going to make her mine. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that sounds like perfect for a gay man to sing to his male boy son. But okay, I'll do that. I'll sing it to
I don't
him.
know why that would be inappropriate. Why would it ever be inappropriate to sing the Beatles? Or you could also sing Hey Jude, right? That's a great
I
song.
sing Hey Jude, but I just tend to do that a little bit less in the middle of the night. I mean, Golden Summers, it's clearly a lullaby. He says, "Let me sing this lullaby."
There's also the last song on the White Album, which is a
I think you
lullaby
could-
of sorts.
All right, I'll look at that too. But I got to be honest, I've never sung so much
You can't
Beatles.
sing Hey Jude in the middle of the night. It has that raucous.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It picks up. You start yelling. You
exactly.
wake the kid up.
Well, you don't sing the
You don't
last
have-
part.
Yeah, you don't have to sing that part.
You have
You
to sing
can't
the whole
stop once you
song
start
of
going.
every song.
Yes, of course. Beginning
You
to
need to
end,
sing
all
that
of it.
one song by Led Zeppelin about something in the rain, and then when the
Fool in the
instrumental,
Rain?
I know,
That's
I
a
love it,
great
and then when the
song.
instrumental part, get out that whistle,
Really
really wake them up in the middle of the night.
I think
Okay.
you should do AC/DC as a lullaby. That would work nicely too.
I do occasionally sing Billy Idol's White Wedding.
When you say
So what-
AC/DC, you mean I Want to Rock You All Night Long?
Or Dirty Deeds
Dirty
Done
Deeds Done Dirt Cheap?
Dirty
Yeah,
deeds
yeah.
and
Were you an AC/DC fan back in your misspent youth there, Shelley?
No, sometimes I listen to the 80s, 70s, 90s on my car, that channel, and some of those songs come back. And if you listen
There
to
are
the
three
lyrics,
different channels. There's a
there are
70s
three different
channel,
channels. Yes,
and
it's
an
serious.
80s channel, and a 90s channel. There's
Depending
also
on my
a 60s
mood.
channel.
And
So
I just find it
sometimes you're in a
hilarious.
70s mood, like you feel like a hippie, and sometimes
that
you're in
lasts
an
for
80s
like
mood,
4
you feel like
seconds.
making a lot of money and screwing the poor, and sometimes
Yeah.
you're in a 90s mood.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to have choices.
Okay, Shelley the Squirrel Killer.
Yeah,
that
so
note-
what's on top of my mind this morning is I got up extra early to make this golden milk powder recipe because it has turmeric in it. So, my massage therapist gave it to me yesterday, and cinnamon and ginger and
Then you rub it on your
pepper.
body.
No, you put it with milk. It's like a tea kind of thing without the tea.
No caffeine.
No caffeine, and it is
Ugh.
delicious.
Okay.
Delicious.
We'll put the recipe on the website.
Okay, I will send it to you. It's supposed to turmeric is supposed to be anti-inflammatory, so that's why I'm doing
Unlike
it for
Jim.
my back.
Am I inflammatory?
No,
Yeah. I mean,
You
kind
can't be.
Unlike
yeah,
Jim,
I mean,
that's good.
Yeah.
So let's jump into our discussion about bankruptcy. Who wants to start?
Well, Jim, what are we talking about today, and why are we talking about this?
Okay, well, we're talking about it because you wanted to talk about it, and we've talked
Well-
about it. You and I have discussed this in the past, and basically, the U.S. has historically had very lenient bankruptcy laws, much more lenient than most of other countries in, say, for example, Western Europe. And in 2005, the bankruptcy
That all
laws
changed.
were for the personal bankruptcy laws. Let's be clear now. There's business bankruptcy and there's personal bankruptcy. But personal bankruptcy was made much more difficult in 2005. A number of changes were made to make it more difficult to declare personal bankruptcy or to successfully declare personal bankruptcy. And
Why do we care?
The key Democratic sponsor of that legislation, it had a lot of Republican support as well, obviously, was Senator Joseph Biden.
Interesting. This is not a good time for this podcast.
And
This is the wrong time
the
for this
person,
podcast.
not a member of Congress, but the person who was the chief opponent who testified and came to prominence first came to any sort of national prominence by testifying against the reform was a woman who was a professor named Elizabeth Warren.
Wow.
And she
This
led
is why Joe and
fight
Elizabeth
against it.
hate each other.
They do not hate each other, as a matter of fact.
Dislike each other.
They do not, as a matter of fact,
have
dislike
strong
each other.
policy feelings opposed to
They
each
have
other.
some policy differences. However, Elizabeth Warren has made a proposal in her part of her campaign to roll back a number
Thank
of changes
God.
to the bankruptcy law.
Thank God.
And presidential candidate Joe Biden has said he agrees. He's going to support them when he becomes.
All right. So wait a minute, Jim. You're basically making the argument out of the gate that something that's probably incongruous for a lot of people, which is that bankruptcy is good. So why is bankruptcy good?
Well, let's begin. Let me. Yes. The answer is yes. But before I say that, let me just qualify the following things. I'm not giving anybody any specific legal advice
Oh, Jesus,
or
here we
personal
go.
financial advice.
Oh, my God, the lawyer.
In the United
lawyer
States,
disclaimer.
In the United States, the reason why there was this pressure to do bankruptcy reform is because during the 1990s, personal bankruptcies were escalating to the point where they reached 1.6 million personal bankruptcies in the year 2003. Now, some of you who recall the 1990s, such as Shelley does when she's listening on her radio, will recall that for most of that decade, the country was relatively prosperous, low inflation, low unemployment. For 3 of the years of the 1990s, in fact, the U.S. government actually had a balanced budget for the first time since 1968. And also, it was during that period that real wages actually rose a little bit. So why, if all that good economic news is going on, do you have all these personal bankruptcies? Well, the answer is personal bankruptcy is actually a good thing. It actually helps the economy. Because what does personal bankruptcy achieve? You have people that are mired in debt and they are able to discharge their debts, and then they are free to become productive consuming members of our society, because consumption, that is to say buying goods and services, is what keeps the economic engine moving forward. Why is the economy right now cratered? It's because the pandemic has the effect of drastically reducing consumption, right?
People are just saving money. We're like Japanese people.
Yes, but that's not good. That's bad. Consumption is good because consumption creates demand, creates production, which creates wealth.
So you're telling me, I think that's intuitive for a lot of people in terms of businesses, that bankruptcy is good for businesses because businesses take risks. And if you fail, you shouldn't go to debtors' prisons like during Dickens' time. and that makes sense. You want that you want businesses to be able to take risks and maybe succeed, maybe fail. So you want to have a backstop where people don't end up going to prison for debt, or where there's horrible ways for different creditors to go after different debtors for the money. Like, I loaned him $1,000, I owned him 10,000, and they fight over it. I understand it in business. It's good in person. It sounds like what you're saying is it's good in personal bankruptcy for exactly the same reasons.
Yes, it is, because
it's a backstop for things going wrong.
It's not a backstop. It's the other side of the equation, right? We want businesses to be out there producing goods and services, but we also need people to buy those goods and services. And if you have people mired in such a situation that they cannot not be active consumers, that's bad. That
so how have
undermines
so Jim, just for the sake of to emphasize the point, for the sake of argument, how have other countries that don't have those liberal bankruptcy laws, the Britain, Japan, other capitalist countries that don't have a bankruptcy law like the U.S., how have they survived?
Well, they've all survived, of course, because, I mean, it's not a question between they have bankruptcy laws. They're not as liberal. Part of the reason the U.S. laws have always been more liberal is the ethos of the country, right? I mean, the country started as the idea, the second chance for so many people to come and restart their lives. And then even once you got here, there was the idea of the frontier where you could go and restart your lives. So bankruptcy is, a liberal bankruptcy means, yes, you can restart your life. You can discharge your debts and go forward. So that's been part of the ethos of the United States. But the other thing that goes hand in hand with liberal bankruptcy laws is that the United States has much more consumer credit than other countries do, even countries in Europe, and has higher interest rates for those credit.
So in other words, because we let people get more credit cards and run up debt more, we need to have bankruptcy. There's different theories about that. There are about what is the primary cause of personal bankruptcy, but Michelle White, who is a professor at University of California, San Diego, is one of the leading academic experts, basically has done a study where she relates the increase of bankruptcy to the increase in credit cards. Credit cards really, in the modern sense, began in the 1960s, but it wasn't really till the rise of interstate banking and the fact that banks were allowed to park their credit card operations in states where there was no limit on the interest rate, that you had this explosion of consumer credit. So basically, we have a situation now where you can get, credit cards are relatively easy to get. You pay a relatively high interest rate, and that's fine. And then the other side of that coin is when people get mired in debts, we have to have a way for them, a mechanism to get them out of those debts and be able to rejoin the consumer society that we live in.
So you are couching this all in a very much more positive light than how I think most people think about having to claim personal bankruptcy, because there are some downsides of it for them individually. Can you comment on those?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have to be able to be eligible for bankruptcy. You have to have assets that don't add up to your liabilities. That's number one. But secondly, there are some factors. It does, for example, affect your credit and ability to get credit, although it's not, impossible to get out of that. It does, you have to go through it. You have to file. You have to pay the cost of filing. You have to go through the process. You have to deal with how your assets are going to be distributed. So it's not that there is nothing. It's not like, shall we go to a movie or shall we declare bankruptcy? They're equally fun. That's not that. But what it does do is it provides a mechanism for people to get out from under. For example, just to use an example, the part of the 2005 reform made it not impossible, but very difficult to discharge student loans in bankruptcy. It applied a new test to it, an additional test beyond the test of merely qualifying for bankruptcy.
What's the test? I thought it was they just said you couldn't discharge student loan in bankruptcy.
But you have to meet this, what they call a hardship test, which is very difficult to meet.
What does it mean? You just don't have enough money? How is it different from the regular
it's
bankruptcy?
Very complicated, and I don't know if we want to go into the details. But the point is they've made it very difficult to discharge.
Okay.
So part of Elizabeth Warren's proposal is to treat student loan debt the way other debt is treated in bankruptcy. Just like
So
another
like
debt.
all those baby boomer hippies who went to college in the 60s after Vietnam and ran up massive college debts, all those guys who are now in their 60s who are living off the largesse of the fact that the stock market keeps booming and they got rid of all their student loans by just claiming bankruptcy if they weren't making some money, and they just cleared off their student loans.
That's not true.
Whereas those of us in Gen X and millennials are screwed because we're stuck with the student loans.
First of all,
the rest
John,
of our lives.
You're not a millennial. You're
a
Gen Xer.
That's what I said.
Okay.
Gen Xers and millennials.
No. First of all, that's not true.
Peggy has her hand up.
Secondly, first of all, student loan debt was much lower because the cost of college was much lower. The big issue there, which is the big unaddressed issue that needs to be addressed, is why the cost of college has gone up so remarkably over the last 40 years, way beyond the cost of most everything else. And I don't think, for example, that Harvard.
That's not my question. My question is just how many did more people declare bankruptcy and have student loans cleared of baby boomers than millennials?
Because the rise in personal bank. First of all, there were very many fewer baby boomers who had student loan debt. Number two, the rise in personal bankruptcy really started in the 90s, and it's really associated with the proliferation of credit cards.
I have a question. This is very simple, but you said the words, how to distribute your assets. Did you say those words? So if you file
when you declare bankruptcy.
If you file or declare bankruptcy and you have assets, they don't take them. Like if you own a house.
Well, a house is a specific thing. Most states have what is called a homestead exemption, which means that your house cannot be taken as part of bankruptcy because it's where you live. But at least in theory, if you have other assets, they can be used to satisfy your creditors. That's part of what the idea of bankruptcy is.
Yes. Or anything you own that can be sold.
Well, it could be
if you had two houses.
If your car is not, if you've paid off your car, then it could be. But
what if you need
a car, because you have a car loan and the car loan comes with a lien on the car, that is usually not subject. Your other creditors can't get to it because the lien holder is in a preferred place.
You need your car to get to
Peggy,
work so you can still get your income.
There is a provision in there that covers that sort of thing, access to transportation. So my point is that there are downsides to taking.
There are downsides, but wait, I want to back up a second. Do we all agree bankruptcy is good in general, based on Jim's explanation right there?
Is it like child support, where to ensure that the deadbeat, whoever who doesn't pay their child support, it comes directly from their paycheck and transfers to the recipient of the child support? If you declared bankruptcy and you owed money, do they take automatically from your paycheck to pay?
No. Bankruptcy is not about future earnings.
So
although it can be,
it could be, but generally it's not.
No,
they wipe it clean.
We need to make it clear, because that's one of the big significant things about the 2005 law is there's two different kinds of bankruptcy. There's Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Chapter 13 essentially puts you on a repayment plan, and that essentially does what, although not literally perhaps, but essentially does what Peggy is talking about, which it says, okay, you have all these debts you can't afford to pay, so we're going to put you on a payment plan of X amount a month, and eventually you'll pay off your debt. One of the things Chapter 5 did, the 2005 changes did, was it forced a lot of people to go into Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which essentially means a repayment plan as opposed to a discharge of your debts. That's one of the things that Elizabeth Warren's proposal would change. It would make that repayment plan a much more infrequent use of bankruptcy, and it would make much more easy for individuals as opposed to businesses who enter into bankruptcy to discharge their debts and get a fresh start. Obviously, going on a payment plan could be helpful, but it's not the same thing as clearing someone of their debts so they can move forward.
So I have a question. So if somebody goes through bankruptcy and they have outstanding balance to 5 credit cards, their mortgage, a car loan, student, all these different loan liabilities, is it so the government or some entity consolidates all of that, and then when you go on the payment plan, you write a payment to whatever they've reduced that to?
You create a plan. There's federal bankruptcy courts, and you create a plan that does that. And
so they go to all those loan
judge.
people. It's not like you have to write a check to all those people that's reduced.
Oh, I don't know that. I don't. I mean, in terms of the practical how it's administered, I don't know the answer.
So I actually, when I was in law school, I actually interned for a federal bankruptcy judge for a semester.
So then you know a lot about this.
And I do and I don't. I mean, I took a bankruptcy class and I know it. I know it, but I don't. I mean, things change and I don't know everything. But I do know the general idea. And I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of reasons why people can hate bankruptcy. For example, and the big one I would mention is, I mean, the judge I worked for did the United Airlines case, the United Airlines bankruptcy, and like a lot of private companies, what really happened and this is my gross oversimplification because this is what I do, but I think this is unquestionably a big part of it. These big corporations that go through bankruptcy, the main thing that the judge does is the judge comes in and says, this creditor who that United owes $1 million to is going to get $5. This creditor who United Airlines owes $10 million to gets $20. And they just literally, the judge declares
decides
how much each one of them. Yes, the judge decides. That's what the judge does. But the main thing that judges did, and they definitely did this during the United bankruptcy, was they said United owes its workers' pension fund X amount of dollars. That is gone. There's no more money. They owe them nothing to that fund anymore. So a lot of private companies, a lot of them that went through bankruptcy did it to discharge their pension obligations, which is one of the reasons why pensions are such a big deal in the public sector. Because of course, public, as you guys may or may not have heard, Mitch McConnell wants the state of Illinois to go through bankruptcy to get rid of its big pension obligations. The public and states cannot go through bankruptcy because they're states. They're sovereign nations. They're states. They're government. They're not allowed to go through bankruptcy because they're not subject to federal control in that way under the Constitution. But private companies can, and that's why a lot of private companies, all they did when they went through bankruptcy is wipe out their pension funds.
Well, I think that's
which meant a lot of people didn't
overstating the
case. Well, now it is overstated. It is overstated. And ERISA, there's been a lot of laws since then that have changed that.
Also,
but at that time, it was true.
That there's a distinction between business bankruptcy and and wait a minute. Let me just also say that the business bankruptcy rules in the United States are not considerably more liberal than they are in other parts, like in Europe. It's the personal bankruptcy laws that tend to be different.
Well, and this is what I think is interesting to hear from Peg and Shelley, because to me, it's like, I'm curious what you guys think about what we should do with bankruptcy for personal cases. Like, what's ideal for society? For me, it makes a lot of sense to say that there's no difference between how we want an American to act as to how we want a business to act, which is we want people to go out and take risks and try things and try to succeed. Go to college, the best college they can get into, and maybe run up student loans because they can get into that great college and be the best they can be, get the best education, whatever it is. And they build up debts and they try. But if they fail, to me, it seems obvious that we should say, well, those should be written off. That we should be able to say, you failed, so you should write it off. That we want to encourage risk-taking in a society that's about innovation.
I don't think you should go to the best possible college you can just because you can get in there. It's fine to get student loans, but if you want to be a elementary education major, then why go to Harvard when you could go to a state school? Or why, if you want to be a nurse, go to Penn when you could go to IU? Or why, you don't need to go to the most expensive.
The bigger point is, so John's bigger point about
I don't think it should be discharged.
Encouraging people to take
fine.
risks.
Risks are fine to a certain extent, but I don't think you should just be absolved of your debt just because you failed. You have to be responsible for taking those risks.
Yeah. Because I agree, because if, the lesson there is, I tried, I failed, but someone's going to bail me out. I try, I fail, I get bailed out again. It's a
Well,
repetitive
yes.
cycle.
Again, it's not a bailout.
Let's
Wait a
don't
minute,
even
wait a
go
minute.
there. It's Sunday. I got mass in an hour.
It's not a bailout. Nobody is bailing you out. But what it does do, the effect of people not being able to discharge their debts is to drag down the American economy.
Well, that's the big macroeconomic argument. But Peggy and Shelley are making a moral argument, an ethical argument.
So what should we do with people that have excess
That's
debt?
the
Should we
question.
put them in jail?
That's
what
the question.
they used to
No.
do.
You guys, so what is the solution?
What I said,
what
they need
should
to
we
work.
do?
If they have to work at McDonald's, so be it. A portion of their money has to be siphoned. It depends on their cost of living. They can't live it.
Okay, and
They
how
can't
who
live
does
in their,
that help?
I think you should
Who
have to
does that
pay. I
help?
think you should have to pay.
Who does that help?
The government.
If we do
So the
that?
government's not absorbing all the
teaches them-
debt.
Doesn't help the government. Doesn't help the government.
It helps the banks. That
It
loan
doesn't
does it
help
help?
the banks. Not really.
I don't know who.
I mean,
I
it
don't know
helps
who
the
it
banks,
helps,
sure. But is that what
the
you want
banks
to do?
get their
You think?
debt.
Are you concerned
Peg,
about
you're
the
helping
health
the
of the
banks.
Well,
banks?
we need the
You're
banks.
helping the banks, Peg.
Are you concerned
I
about
don't.
the health of the
You know
banks?
what? Again, here's where my ignorance is going to show on this topic. But I do think, just in general, I mean, the banks don't have endless money, do they? They just print it.
Okay. Well, okay. They don't have endless money. You're right. But let's look.
But they're just
Wait
businesses.
a minute. The 2005 law, the argument for the 2005 law was because we have 1.6 million people declaring bankruptcy, that's too many, and it's causing interest rates to go up, and everybody is paying the price for it, right? That was the argument for doing the 2005 law change, right?
I'll take your word for it. I don't
Do you
know.
think interest rate? Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I think you've lost us. Jim,
Okay.
on that one.
Okay, so the argument was that this is causing credit card interest rates to be really high because of all these bankruptcies, right? So do you think since this law is passed and bankruptcies have sharply been reduced, that credit card interest rates have gone down over the last 15 years?
No way. Does that make sense, Peg? That makes sense. The banks are screwed, right? The banks are screwed when people claim bankruptcy.
Well, they're not screwed. That's the point. It's part of the risk they take.
Supporting what you're saying. So I'm just reiterating it. So I want to. So somebody owes $100,000 because they went to Penn for undergrad. Then they got a job as an elementary school teacher in Michigan that pays $25,000 a year. They can't afford to make their payments, so they go through bankruptcy. And whatever bank loaned them the $100,000 to pay to Penn gets screwed and gets no money. Now that bank is out $100,000 that they thought they were going to get back. They're out of that money. They're $100,000 lower. But let's say it's even, forget about student loans. Let's say they borrowed $100,000 in credit cards because the bank
which
was
is more
stupid and gave them
common.
credit cards.
Which is much more
They
common.
gave them $100,000 in credit card debt. The person then gets a job as an elementary school teacher for $20,000 and goes, oh, shoot, I thought I was going to get a job in a rich North Shore Chicago district and easily be able to pay back this, but I can't. I got a job in a poor part of Michigan and I'm only making $20,000 a year. I can't afford to pay back my loans. So now the bank doesn't get its $100,000 back. Do you think that would cause interest rates on future credit cards to go up or down? If the bank's consistently getting screwed out of $100,000, do they have to charge more for future? Exactly. And if they have fewer bankruptcies, if they're not allowed to have bankruptcies, if that $20,000 a year employee in Michigan is no longer allowed to go through bankruptcy, do you think that the interest rates will go up or down? In other words, the bank always gets their money. The bank always gets their money. Do credit card exactly,
right.
But that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened. That's Jim's point.
See, there's a reason for this because. John, I would rather put this in economic terms than put it in value terms. I understand what you're saying about encouraging people to fail, but think of it in this way. If this person let's say a person has run up hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit card debt, what have they done with that money? They've spent it. They've bought goods and services. Buying goods and services is what the economy is. We want people to buy goods and services. We want them to buy more goods and services. Credit is what allows us to buy more goods and services. Banks extend credit. What are they extending credit on? What is ultimately credit extended on? They are essentially investing in the person. They are saying this person will be able to pay us back this money. Sometimes they are wrong about that, and those persons go into bankruptcy.
That person who went to Penn and then got a job in Michigan.
Forget about the person who went to Penn. Let's just say the person bought 20 Cadillacs. You can say, why is that person buying 20 Cadillacs? But buying 20 Cadillacs is good. It gives people work. It puts money on other people's pockets and puts food on other people's tables. And we want people to do that. What the banks essentially do is they are making bets on people. They are essentially adopting the Marxist theory, which is true, is that all value comes from labor, in the sense that all value is created by people's ability to make something valuable. And that therefore the banks are basically saying, okay, we think you're worth this, and we're going to let you have access to this money. Now, sometimes the banks are going to make mistakes.
Jim, that's weird.
Why?
Yeah,
well,
so the
weird
banks don't
because
know.
People don't understand what value is or how wealth is created.
But I have a problem with this whole thing because, first of all, the banks really don't know these people that they're giving the money to. They're making a value decision on this person is worth this $100,000.
You're right. They have algorithms to figure this out.
Yeah, they have algorithms, and they're a piece of shit, because otherwise we wouldn't have people who get themselves in these situations. I also think if a person is going to claim bankruptcy because of personal credit card debt, that's a fundamental problem with that person. They overspend in a way that they don't have the ability to buy those goods and services. And so they shouldn't be given credit cards again.
Wow.
I understand your philosophy of feeding back into the economy, but it's this cycle that person is not, they're overspending.
And that's what we should really
means.
want, is to stop people from doing that.
Yes, we want people to understand what is their means. What defines what your means are?
If they have a salary. I mean, I know of people who have done this or tried to do this, and it was solely based on personal credit card debt. And I literally have to leave a room when someone talks about it because it makes me so angry. Mm-hmm. It's their own
Why does it make you angry,
fault.
Shelley?
Because it's their own fault.
No, I'm with Shelley on this.
They
you cannot.
overbuy.
I want to. Yeah.
They buy 12 pairs of black pants.
So what? That's good. It's good for the people that make the black pants. It's good for the people that sell the black pants.
This is the problem of our society, that's so far gone.
No.
If we could go way back before this all got to be like this.
Yes, we'd all be much poorer.
We don't need all this stuff.
We would be poorer.
No, it's not fine.
Jim's making a macroeconomic point, but Jim, you cannot separate out the moral dimension to it, the ethical dimension to it.
The moral dimension is we should make sure that people have enough food to eat and have medical care and decent housing and decent
disagree
they
with
should have enough food to eat, but they don't need to eat it at a 5-star restaurant.
No, we should not, because that actually helps all of us. It helps all of us.
It helps all of us for multiple people to claim bankruptcy.
That's what Jim's saying.
It makes it easier for people to claim bankruptcy because that means those people can spend more money. What helps all of us is when people buy things.
You guys, this is a crazy argument, but it's macroeconomically sound. This isn't like Jim's out on cloud nine on this. This is economies grow when people spend money.
And that is true, but why does it have to?
And everybody benefits. Like all ships rise with the tide on that, right? So if the economy's doing better, everyone does better.
Why can't we go and have it be simpler than that?
Well, because we have we're under a capitalist model, and the capitalism necessarily
why do you have to have
risk.
A new car?
Because the idea is, if you have an idea, you try something, and if you fail, you don't go to prison.
But Peg, listen. You think of it in terms of need versus want and all that. And those are great moral terms. And look, there's nothing preventing people from following a certain moral thing and how they spend their money. Nobody's forced to spend any money, okay? And let's also be clear that no bank is being forced to issue a credit card to anybody.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And if the banks really were suffering from all these bankruptcies, if it was cutting into their profits, what would they do? They'd issue fewer credit cards.
Why'd they do that when?
There's a market that
So,
regulates
in
these
2000
things, right? And the market
Yeah, but
can,
then they did change.
Go
They
ahead.
did change some things when
Not credit
housing,
cards.
Just
when
a
we had
little.
this
This is-
housing
yeah.
crisis, everybody
housing
could get a
market,
loan, and you
we
got
had-
these ridiculous loans.
Well, let's talk about that.
And they
Okay,
had to
and in
stop
fact-
kind of
it.
refutes Shelley's example of the individual who was immoral
Wait a minute,
during
hold it.
during
Let me
running up
talk
too much
about the
credit
housing
card debt.
crisis, because that's
Okay.
very indicative. The Federal Reserve, staff at the Federal Reserve have done a paper demonstrating that the 2005 bankruptcy law changes that made it more difficult to actually had a severe effect of both causing and contributing to the seriousness of the 2009 Great Recession. Because one of the things that happened is that people who had trouble making their mortgage payments meet didn't have the easy option of declaring bankruptcy to get out of their other debts, so they then weren't able to put as much money toward their mortgage payments. And that's when you had the crisis when the mortgage payment thing collapsed.
So it wasn't that the banks gave loans to people who they should never have given loans to on these.
What does that mean? They should never have given loans,
So
Shelley.
somebody who
only
makes
people who
$50,000
deserve
No,
loans
you have to
should
have-
get them.
Well, somebody
do banks give a?
yeah.
Are banks should loans
No,
be given
it's
based
about
on
your
moral
income.
worth?
It's
No,
about how much
somebody
money
that-
you have.
Yeah, somebody who makes $50,000 a year
Banks
shouldn't
give
buy
money
a.
for houses based upon
Yeah, but
the
they also
value
did
of
these
the
super
property.
weird things like buying a house with no money down.
And some of those things, what happened is those instruments are not necessarily bad, but they weren't properly regulated.
Or these 7
That's
one-arms or
my
these
point.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Some of those actually, look, part of the American ethos is we do want to make it easier for people with lower income to purchase a house. That's part of our thing. But some of the instruments a lot of the instruments the banks were using were not properly regulated, okay? And that's a failure of regulation. It's not a failure of the people who got it. Some of those people were always going to default, okay? Because a certain percentage of people,
Right.
this is the risk element, a certain percentage of people are not going to succeed, and that's going to happen. But it didn't have to be this cascading effect like that, okay? It's also because the banks themselves were undercapitalized, okay? But none of this was caused by the credit card stuff. The credit card stuff, what contributed to it was we were making more people keep their credit card payments so they couldn't put the money toward their mortgage payments. That didn't help the situation.
That's fine.
It hurt
I'm
the
not saying it was
situation.
caused because of the
makes sense.
credit card situation. There's two separate things.
But I mean, you guys have to think about the fact that wealth is created because people value and buy things. And if they stop buying things, we're all poorer.
So Peggy, what were you going to say? You were going to say something just
I
now.
just said that I'm not thinking that the housing is related to the credit card. I just was thinking about how the housing thing got out of control, and it's kind of similar. I mean, I don't know. I guess
It's not
The
similar.
housing thing is different, Peggy, and I'll tell you the one way it's different from Shelley's earlier example, which is, let's say there are people out there who are, consciously and intentionally going out and trying to screw the system. And I know Jim would say these people should go do that because that's good because they're spending money. But let's pretend that there's a majority of people who think that this is kind of unethical or immoral, going out there and just trying to buy a lot of expensive things and then screw over the system and then declare bankruptcy. There's no question that during the housing crisis, or quite frankly, during this pandemic, where people have no money and some people have no income and are just like unable to, they're like getting food and they can't pay the credit card. There's no question that in certain situations, there's no moral fault. It's because something bigger than the people that they played by the rules, as Bill Clinton would say, and they were doing what they were following the rules, trying to pay their mortgage, and they didn't get a mortgage that was too high, and they didn't run up too much credit card debt, but they still, because of things far larger than the macroeconomic situations, housing bubbles in 2009, they can't make their payments. In that case where there's no moral fault, it seems like there needs to be some kind of a safety mechanism.
What if every single one of us did what Jim is saying is a good thing?
You wouldn't do that, Peg, because first of all, most people aren't necessarily eligible to declare bankruptcy. That's number one. And number two, you wouldn't want to go through it if you don't
So you
need to
think
go
that
through
people
it.
who are eligible for it should keep just spending like mad because they are good for the economy and they can declare bankruptcy. So good for them.
I think that people should spend, again, I'm not giving people personal financial advice, but what I am saying is, look, we don't make,
Clarify.
what we do is there's going to be a bankruptcy law. There's a bankruptcy law now. Nobody's getting rid of bankruptcy, okay? The question is, should it be easier or harder?
Where do you draw the line?
My point is, when the laws are easier, it's better for the country.
So
when the laws are easier.
So should
And I
I
think
check
history
out the
proves that.
laws
And history proves
see if I'm eligible for bankruptcy, and then when I find out I am, just fucking go for it?
Peg.
You're not eligible.
I'm
You
not
make too much.
giving you personal financial advice, just
Peggy,
like I'm not giving anybody personal financial advice.
Peggy, I mean, I think that should people do that? Yes. If they're, in other words, should we try to separate out? And I think this is one of the main things. When Jim first told me this story, way before I went to law school and way before I worked for a bankruptcy judge, when Jim first told me this, and I've heard this for many years from him, I thought to myself, wow, this is going to be hard because people feel it's immoral to not pay back their debts. People feel like it's horribly wrong not to do it. Do I think that it's good? But the vast majority, Jim would say not fortunately. Jim would say it doesn't matter. But let me say that if I do think that there's value, I do think there's value in people taking out to the moral dimension to bankruptcy more than they do today, because it isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Did you hear what I said?
It's in fact, it's a very good
thing. Did you hear
when
one of the
when you're
things
stuck.
I said was, should I investigate first and find out if I will be eligible? Meaning, do you think people actually do that?
Obviously, you should investigate.
I think people just spend.
Well,
sure. You call a lawyer. You call a bankruptcy lawyer and say, should I declare bankruptcy? And they'll tell you.
They don't look into it first, is what I'm saying. And so then the people get themselves into trouble who aren't eligible for it. And now they're in huge debt because they're not eligible to declare bankruptcy. Nobody checks first.
Okay.
They just do it and then they hope.
Obviously. But Peg, my
Not
point
obviously,
is, look,
that's what I'm saying. Now we have all these people in debt.
No, I think people do check first, Peg. I think people do check first.
Her question
nobody takes on more debt than they can afford.
Well,
they don't consciously try to do it.
People are so crazy. They do it like crazy and they don't even think. They think, I can afford this.
Okay.
Theirs.
Whose fault is that?
I think Peg's point is,
why did the bank loan them money if they can't cover the debt?
I think Peg's point.
Well, they get credit card.
Peg's point is that people, when they get their credit cards, don't sit and analyze their financial position.
I want to say to John,
that's true.
Peg, are you saying banks are stupid?
No.
Let's say they shouldn't let them have the credit card?
John,
believe me, banks know what they're doing.
They give you a credit card. Let's say I make $65,000 a year and I'm 24. Hell yes. Hell yes, they're going to give me a credit card.
Peggy, why do they do that?
That's a great candidate to have a credit card. And then it's that person's fault if they can't figure out how to pay their credit card every month.
Peg, if somebody's making $10,000 a year and the bank gives them a $100,000 credit card limit,
I'm not talking about those people. I'm saying,
why
would you give somebody who makes $66,000 a year a $100,000 limit, and then they spend $100,000 and they can't pay for it?
Good question.
Because they think the people are going to be responsible.
Why do they do it?
That person should be allowed to have a credit card.
No, because they're going to spend. They're going to spend.
I know,
they're making money.
I know that part. That's obvious. They want you to get into the debt so you get the interest rate, but you don't. That's a reasonable amount of money, and you should be allowed to have a credit card. But I'm still focusing on the individual person should be able to manage a credit card.
Well, Peg, all right, Peg, let's say that's fine. That you're saying that I'll say to you that I agree with you as a general proposition that people should be responsible. That people should not act irresponsibly. Just period. Okay? Full stop. People should act responsibly. Now, the question is, from my perspective, is what kind of bankruptcy laws as a society do we want to have? And to me, the question that when you make any law should be, what is a law that benefits the most of society? In other words, how will the most of society benefit by the way this law is structured? Do we want to make a law that benefits a few people, or do we want to say this will benefit the greatest number of people? Okay? And making bankruptcy laws more liberal, this is the essential argument, benefits the broadest segment of society. Okay, forget about that it benefits some people that may not deserve it. Okay, that's like saying if we make college free, let's just say, which some people have proposed, and I'm not saying I even agree with that.
That's why this is relevant, I think,
but
now too.
If we make it free, some people will benefit from that who shouldn't benefit from it. Or some people say, for example, I'm rich. There's this rich guy who's collecting Social Security. Why should he collect Social Security? He's rich. But we make the laws, or we're supposed to make the laws, so they benefit the broadest spectrum of society possible. And the point is that by making bankruptcy laws liberal, we benefit the broadest spectrum of society. Truthfully, one of the things, the great engine of the American economy is access to credit, because credit makes it easier for people to spend. Debt is good. It makes it easier to spend. Debt actually increases wealth, okay? Because it makes it easier for people to spend and buy things, and that keeps the country going. The banks are not going out of business because of their credit cards. They're making tons of money because of their credit cards, okay? So if they weren't making money on their credit cards, you know what they would do? They'd stop giving out credit cards. But they aren't.
Makes sense.
I get 5 credit card solicitations
that makes sense
a
to
week
me. I'm with you.
in the mail. Not to mention all the emails I get for credit card solicitations.
I think the difference in this conversation is that Jim is looking at it at the whole population level, and Peggy and I know from myself, I'm hung up at the individual level.
And I agree with Shelley.
And that's where
people get mad,
that.
like, oh, why does so-and-so get to not pay their bills and I pay my bills? And that's what people get so upset about.
Exactly.
When, it's so, that's
exactly.
I guess.
I'm responsible. I know what I can afford and not go over my limit. And this person gets off scot-free.
For many years, I was in HR, and people were always upset. Not always. A lot of people were upset a lot of the time about what other people made, how much money somebody else made. And I would say to them, unless you think they are going to take some of that money away from that person and give it to you, what difference does it make to you how much another person makes? Because
and that's
it
great
doesn't
advice,
make
but
any
people are
difference to
just
you.
not wired that way.
Well, I understand that.
Well, Americans
it even happens with vacation. Like, why does so and so take so much vacation? And people are just looking at what other people are doing all the time, to the point of ridiculousness.
I understand that. And it's not just Americans that's built into people. There's this, envy and jealousy.
Yeah.
Those things exist, and blah blah blah. But they're not a good basis for public policy.
Well, no, but Jim, to Peggy's point, it's part of the reason why in other countries they don't have liberal bankruptcy laws, because people literally, as a society, collectively can't get past it. In Japan, they have large. Japan has most people save money, and because of that, Japan's been in a deflationary, cycle. Yeah. They went through the 10, what were they called? The lost years, the decade, the 10 years of loss, because people weren't spending money.
Yep.
And there wasn't enough of a domestic economy, and America has never had that problem.
Well, and
people
so we got this stimulus
and that
check.
has been and that's been mostly due to debt, and that's why. And people spend money, and that's what keeps the American economy
you told me
going.
I didn't understand it because I said I didn't really need it because I have a job and I'm still getting paid, and so you said. So, and I did. I spent it. I didn't put it in my bank and save it.
Okay, and helps
I get that.
the economy.
So why'd she get one and I didn't get one?
So when
you got a stimulus check.
I don't know how much money
you made
respectively you guys make. If it makes you feel any better, I didn't get one either. But the point is,
please, sir, can I have some more?
When you see these things about so and so rich guy spent all this money doing X, my thought is, what would we rather do? Have so-and-so rich guy keeping the money under his mattress or in a bank? Or would we rather have so-and-so rich guy spending it? We want him to
but when
spend
I hear
that
about
money.
so-and-so rich guy who saved all his money under his mattress, I think, wow, good for him. He was smart.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
because
And
that's
Jim,
exactly
you know what?
Jim, just
What is
just
the
a couple days
value
ago,
of having that
He's going
money
to have
under
a
your
nice
mattress?
retirement.
Jim,
He'll
just a
have
couple
it if
days
he
ago-
needs it. Yeah.
Jim, just a couple days ago in the New York, I don't know if it was the Wall Street or some newspaper, they had a headline that was "How the Sacklers Can Get Away with It."
Oh, yeah.
And it was about how the Sackler family, because of the bankruptcy laws, will likely get away with not having to pay
See,
back the
that's
billions
horrible.
that the
You mean-
states are asking
That's
for about
horrible.
opioid crisis. And that the article is essentially blaming bankruptcy and saying it is a high hill to get over for people to understand that this idea of helping the overall society is more important than punishing wrongdoers and getting the bad guy and not encouraging bad behavior. Those things are all true too. Those moral arguments, those ethical arguments, those are the foundation for an individualist society like America. We have a very hard time getting past those things.
Because there are better, more effective ways.
And our president has declared Chapter 11 how many times, right? His companies, and why do we respect that?
Well, I don't know that he's
For
ever
business.
personally done it,
That's
but
what
his
I mean.
businesses
Yeah.
do
But
it all
isn't
the time.
Chapter 11
But
for
bear in
business?
mind,
Lots of-
the business
of
bankruptcy
businesses-
laws. Wait a minute. Just to be clear, when they made this reform in 2005, they didn't make it more difficult for businesses to declare bankruptcy. It was only personal bankruptcies they were talking about. And by the way, one of the things they do, simple things they did, for example, just doubling the fees or almost doubling the fees, that doesn't affect people like the Sacklers. It affects the poorer people who have trouble
Correct.
raising the fees
Correct.
to declare bankruptcy.
Right. Yeah. Because
Okay.
it's not a percentage of the piece.
Right.
For sure.
Well, this was riveting.
Well, that was actually
Well-
a pretty good argument.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Are you
No,
being
excellent.
sarcastic,
No,
Peg, or actually
I started
did you
off
enjoy
really
that?
No.
not paying attention.
I thought it was a pretty good discussion.
So let's all summarize. Bankruptcy is good and we should all spend as much money as
and give
possible
more credit
today.
cards.
Spending money is good because spending money creates wealth.
Run your credit card debt up.
Part of the problem, and I'm not going to go
Good.
into the long explanation, but basically is that people have a static concept of what wealth is. They think that this is like the same thing when the people say, well, if old people die, that'll be good because we get their money. Wealth is not static like that. Wealth is created by people. The more people you have creating wealth, the more wealth there is. And what creates wealth is people buying things. That's how wealth is created.
Buy.
There's no such thing as inherent economic value.
All right. I'm just going to.
There's no such thing as
I like to
inherent
define it
economic
less as buy and more about take risks. Take risks. If you think buying some like a new car as a real estate, if you're a realtor, buy a new car to show off and get more business.
You're introducing the moral element back into it, and that's fine, but that's not an economic concept.
No, I know, but I'm saying, Jim, I think my whole point in this thing is that you can't get past the moral piece. People are always going to view it as a moral obligation to pay their debts. If I borrow $10 from my mother, I'm going to pay it back.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I am not.
Well, you
saying,
sort of are.
No,
you sort of
I'm
are saying
not.
It's a bad thing.
I'm simply saying that we should set policy in this country and in any country.
Oh, that's fair.
To encourage people to spend money.
That's fair. But I'm talking about what individuals should do, and I'm saying individuals should support more liberal bankruptcy laws.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is, Jim, not what you're saying. What I'm saying is people should support more liberal bankruptcy laws, and they should take more risks that are rational risks that try to get them more wealth.
And I don't disagree with that.
All right. Let's wrap it up.
That's my advice.
Okay, so let's talk about our recommendations.
Oh yeah.
Who wants
go
to go
last.
first?
I recommend buying a whole lot of stuff you can't
I'll go
afford,
first.
and then
That's your
and then
recommendation.
see how that goes.
Becky.
So, Peg, this is the second time in a row, basically, you say, let's take the podcast topic and recommend
And then ask
it.
all your friends to help you out. No, I'm reading this book that I'm really
When you're
enjoying,
in
and it's
trouble.
called Sweet Lamb of Heaven. And I was trying to finish it beforehand because I really feel like you should finish it before you recommend it. But these podcasts are happening so frequently that I don't have time to finish anything.
Oh, my God.
Oh my God.
So
Oh my God.
Sweet Lamb of
yeah,
Heaven,
it's
right?
It's by
Okay.
Lydia Millett. I don't know if that's how you say it, Millet or Millet. I think it's Millet.
And as always, if you're interested in buying this book on Amazon,
That's
Go
right.
to our
Please.
recommendation page.
go to our recommendation then.
It'll help us.
I'll go next. So I recommend watching the Netflix series Narcos. So the first season was about Pablo Escobar, and I like it because it's a show, but they interject real life clips from the news and what was actually happening at the time and the impact on the economy. And then the second season carries over into Mexico's role in cocaine, because the cocaine was coming from Colombia to the US and they had cut off the Caribbean route, so they had to transport it through Mexico. So that's how Mexico got involved. And what I've learned from that, as well as this podcast, is that buying cocaine created more billionaires in Mexico than before the cocaine industry was there. Like there was one billionaire in Mexico, and then after this, it is absolutely horrifying, the involvement of the U.S. in all of this. I mean, from the DEA to the CIA to the FBI to all
Narcos
the way up.
television series, not particularly factually accurate, but
Super interesting.
Super interesting, and they put in the real clips and news pieces and things, and then it caused me to go to look up some other things that I'm still in the process of looking up that might be more factual than.
Shelley, just building on what you said, I think I sent everybody in this group an article, and this is not my recommendation, so I want to reserve the right to have my recommendation. I sent a New York Times article about immigrants from Guatemala, who mostly immigrants from Guatemala coming to the U.S. It was a New York Times article, Sunday, a long magazine article, and it was excellent. But it connects a lot of those organized crime elements in Mexico to human trafficking and how they've moved into human trafficking from cocaine and from, well, it used to be marijuana, but that's mostly gone now. But it was from cocaine and heroin into the country, and they've moved to human trafficking, and it goes into pretty good detail about like the modern, like the today ways that the techniques that those organized crime elements in Mexico are using to get use immigrants as mules to get drugs across the border. It's utterly fascinating, and it does talk about the same names that Narcos talks about. So I know Narcos isn't historically accurate, but it has a lot of historically accurate stuff in it, and it's very compelling.
And they say it straight up based on
based
true
on a true
events,
story.
and there's some
Yep.
liberties that have been taken. But
A lot of liberties.
I am such a true crime junkie. I love this kind of stuff and cartels and all of that. And I'm learning a lot of Spanish.
We got to get the true crime guy back on the podcast.
Love true crime.
Who's next?
You, Jim. You go.
All right. I'm going to recommend a very, very old TV show. Some of you know that recently we lost Carl Reiner, the great actor, comedian, director, writer. And one of the great monuments of his career is that he created and produced a television sitcom that ran for 5 years from 1961 to 1966 called The Dick Van Dyke Show. Some of you may have seen it. You may not have appreciated how brilliant it really is. It is a show based largely on what had been Carl Reiner's life, because in the 1950s, he was a writer and performer on Your Show of Shows with Sid Caesar, and then later a similar show called Caesar's Hour. And the shows were both produced in New York, and he lived in the suburbs, and he had a wife, and he had a small child who grew up to be Rob Reiner. And so he decided to write a sitcom about his experience being a comedy writer for a television show. And in fact, he originally was going to be the star of the show, and they did a pilot, and the pilot didn't succeed. So they then recast the show with Dick Van Dyke playing the comedy writer, and it became a huge success and was honored.
He's a chimney sweep in that show, right?
No, that's Mary Poppins. Thanks, John. Anyway,
there
was also the first real prominence of Mary Tyler Moore, who played Dick Van Dyke's wife. And it's a brilliant show. It's on various streaming services. You can access it. I think it's on Hulu. I think it's on Amazon. I'm not sure where else it is. But it's very funny. It is in black and white, if that's a problem for some people. But it's many, many brilliant episodes. And
it had a catchy jingle
Sing it for us.
song.
It has a catchy jingle song. I don't know the words, but they didn't sing it. But there you go. And then does he fall over the ottoman or does he step aside this time? That's always the trick.
Yes.
If you watch one episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show, watch one that featured Carl Reiner, because Carl Reiner played a character named Alan Brady, who was Dick Van Dyke's boss. He was sort of the egotistical star of a TV variety show. And if you see one episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show, see the first episode of season 5 called Coast to Coast Big Mouth. But watch the entire series. It's great.
Great. I'll go next. My recommendation is I just forgot my recommendation. What was I going to recommend? Oh, I know what I was going to recommend. I'm sorry. My child just stuck his head in the room, and that is really distracting. My recommendation is using foot cream every day before you go to bed.
Oh my God,
it makes your feet feel so much better.
That sounds like something I would recommend.
Is your recommendation?
Yeah, foot cream.
It does.
I know. I was trying to be more like Peggy. because last time I recommended basically a University of Cambridge lecture series. So I thought this time I would just take it down market.
Ooh, I think
so I said, use some
last time you recommended a podcast.
I did. That was the podcast. No, I'm
That's
not.
fine. I'm fine with it.
I'm with you. I have a big range.
Yeah, me too.
I have a broad range.
Are you using the foot cream only on your foot, or where else are we using the foot cream?
No, just on my feet. Just on my feet. I find that, I like to walk around barefout.
Are
and it's
you
just nice
putting
to
the
have
foot
clean,
cream on, or is
soft
Ted
cream.
putting the foot cream on?
It's an interesting
for you?
question. I am putting it on myself just because I find it's in addition to putting on the foot cream, it's a good stretching exercise where I pull the foot close to my face and give myself a foot massage while putting on the foot
you're
cream.
speaking from a privileged position of someone who could have someone else put the foot cream on. There are those of us
I
who
thought you were
would
going to say the privileged position of somebody who can bend his legs enough to be able to.
There's that too. But I was going to say you have the option of having a partner who could put foot cream on.
I was really wondering why you have to pull it close to your face, but we don't need to go there.
Well, no, because then you can use both thumbs to push hard into it. It feels good to rub it in thoroughly.
You give yourself a foot massage as well as putting the lotion on.
Yeah, it's a little bonus.
I'm with that. I'm with you, John.
Well, no, I don't need to close your face, but so that your foot is literally facing you, so you can massage it thoroughly. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. This is on that incredibly note that we have a broad range on this show. We're proud of it. If you like the show, God bless you if you've listened to this far into the show, and if you like the show, please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. That is an incredibly valuable. It takes literally less than 1/10 of a second to hit the stars. If you want to write a review, that's even better. We love emails. In fact, we have some emails. We're going to do mail next time on the podcast. That's a little teaser. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, to name a few. And we'll be with you again in a fortnight. Thanks for listening.